That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Spiral, the third film directed by Kurtis David Harder, which will premiere on Shudder September 17th, 2020. It, of course, shares a similar name to a lot of other horror and genre films, including an upcoming Chris Rock, Samuel L. Jackson film that's a Saw spin-off, I believe.
Which I'm excited about.
Yeah, that's what'll come up first if you look for the theatrical trailer. But this is an interesting surprise.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't on my radar until I received the screener from Shudder, and yeah.
It stars Jeffrey Bowyer-Chapman from RuPaul's Drag Race Canada.
Do you want to wait to comment on that?
Sure. There's not much to comment about.
That's true.
And who's the other guy?
Ari Cohen they're playing Malik and Aaron, interracial homosexual couple, 1995, who decide that they need to move to a small town to build a better life for themselves and Aaron's 16-year-old daughter, Kayla.
Yep, so the three of them move from Chicago to a small town. I'm assuming it's in the Midwest.
Yeah.
I couldn't gather where they were exactly, but...
It's winter, so...
Right, so they must be in the Midwest. So things go as you would think. The neighbors initially don't seem very welcoming. Malik goes out to check the mail and says hi to a neighbor who completely ignores him. But it's followed up with another neighbor, a female, bringing them of plants and saying how great it is that they have someone different.
Well, so Jeffrey Bowyer-Chapman's like cutting down some branches that were used for a scare the night before because they're hitting the side of the house. And that neighbor's name is Tiffany, and she shows up talking about the gardener, and he's like, "Oh, that's not the gardener, that's my partner." And she goes, "Oh, we don't have any of you in town."
Anyway, so the mechanism the film's using for like scares is a mix of Jeffrey Bowyer-Chapman's character Malik seems to have some sort of trauma associated with a hate crime that occurred 10 years prior, or 20 years prior. It's in the 70s, right?
Yeah, it's in his youth.
In his youth, he's with a guy he's dating, and the guy is dragged out of a car and beaten to a pulp. So we flash back in Malik's head to that scene often throughout the film.
It opens the film, actually.
He also often seems kind of paranoid. Pretty quickly on, he comes home to find that someone has spray painted the word faggots on their wall.
Inside the house.
Inside the house. He's freaked out. He buys an alarm system. The next night, the alarm system goes off. He confronts the person who is snooping around, and it's this little old man who seems afraid and tells him, like, "Please take this and don't tell anyone." And it's just a blank piece of paper.
But anybody that's seen Night of the Demon or Drag Me to Hell knows, don't take those things.
Don't take those things. But he does. He then witnesses, and this is in the trailer for this film, he witnesses the neighbors engaging in some type of like ritual. Like they're kind of in a circle dancing around. Then he finds out that that little old man who passed him the note died. The grandson of that man, who was part of that little ritual scene that Malik had witnessed earlier.
That they're doing like in full view.
Full view for everyone to see.
And then Malik decides to take a Polaroid picture.
Take a Polaroid picture with the flash on. Whatever. So the grandson, who's this younger, attractive guy, comes over and appears to like make a pass at Malik.
He initiates an entanglement.
Aaron, Malik's partner, kind of makes a comment that like, "Oh, he's cute. Maybe we could play with him," like implying they could have a threesome. Moving forward, Malik has started to think that there's something wrong with the neighbors. Like there's something insidious going on. But he's still having these visions that as the audience, we don't know like if they're just sort of imaginary or if they're really rooted in something evil. Because initially you would think they're just a cult, but there's no supernatural component to it.
But they do have dinner at the neighbors, the friendly neighbors.
Marshal, they do have dinner at the neighbors, and they notice that the neighbors have also a separate, younger, attractive son who happens to be like dating kind of Aaron's daughter. And Malik notices there's a portrait of him, or a portrait of a relative from like 100 years ago. And he says like, wow, this looks just like your son. And then the dad makes some comment about how like the bloodline is strong or something.
The bloodlines, and I've been doing family tree history for the past decade, so I have a lot of stuff.
So things obviously are taking a turn.
And then there's the blood scene where Kayla wakes up with blood all over her face.
The daughter wakes up one night screaming because she's covered in blood, and we find that there are some like raccoons or something in the attic that are bleeding into...
dead raccoons bleeding out just suddenly.
Malik also has visions of like some creepy little girl who at one point hands him like a VHS tape.
You wrote, it took me out where the ghost with the VHS tape shows up.
Yeah, that took me all the way out.
Yeah, for sure.
But we'll get to that. Things culminate when Aaron asks the neighbor to take a look at Malik's hard drive.
Marshal. Yes, Marshal.
Because there's something going on with the computer. Aaron also finds like Polaroid pictures in Malik's desk and confronts Malik. And they're pictures of Malik with the attractive grandson of the dead man in like some BDSM stuff. So Aaron is upset and says, like, you have to leave. Like, I want you out of the house. So Malik goes to stay at a hotel. He's sort of having a breakdown. He decides to confront... So he doesn't realize he's been gone for a week, but he goes back to, like, Aaron and the house. And the neighbors are having a party for the daughter.
A birthday party.
A 16th birthday party. And Malik shows up with a gun and shoots Marshal in the chest, presumably killing him. So now Malik's in jail. But Marshal shows up to the jail, like looking like he was never shot, and basically tells him that they're immortals. They, like, every 10 years...
He doesn't say that, but that is the plot mechanism.
But doesn't he say they have to use, like, people... They pray after disenfranchised groups who no one will care about.
How they kind of cull those people is...
We'll get into that.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the plot mechanism.
And he tells him, this is how it's going to go down. It's going to look like you killed Aaron and the daughter and yourself. And no one's going to question it because of who you are. The end. Then we cut to Aaron at his house, like trying to engage his daughter. And he's knocking on the door, let me in, let me in. He knocks down the door and he sees that Marshal's son is eating the daughter.
Tyler.
Like her torso is ripped open and he's actively chewing on her innards.
Nom, nom, nom. Yeah.
And then that's the end of that. The final scene is cut to 2005, so 10 years in the future, and a Middle Eastern family has moved in. So at another point in the film, Malik goes to the library for what seems like the day and is just doing some vigorous microfiche researching and discovers that like every 10 years these people are killed in this town and blah blah blah.
In 1985, a lesbian couple in that town had been killed.
Yeah, who had like dykes spray painted on their wall or house or something. So he makes he creates a report. Like he documents everything he learned. Malik is like narrating this over voiceover, but we see that he's documented everything. He's added pictures of what he's found. He burns it all to a CD-ROM and then puts it in like a CD case and like hides it in the attic. So the final scene is this Middle Eastern family moving in and the daughter goes up into the attic and discovers it. The end. All right. That was a lot. Okay.
So spiral is a visual motif that is used a lot as well. That as they're moving into the town, a rock or something, an object hits their windshield and there's a spiral in the glass and there's shots of the spiral, water going down the drain, and there's one shot of, I think it's Matthew's character, like Matthew, where the camera does a 180 spiral, or is it 360?
360
yeah.
in a circle, yeah. And then Malik's in the garage and like closes it and there's a shadow of a spiral. And
which it'd be nice if the spiral, the mythology of these people had been were explained a little better, because it just doesn't make sense. Like, so 10 years, like randomly a vulnerable somebody from a vulnerable populace just wanders into their town. Like, I need to see, like, a realtor.
Also,
like,
is that enough? Like, I don't understand if they're, like, they need them to feast on?
Right, and...
Because that's not enough meat for all those people.
Like, is it just the character of Tyler who needs it?
Right.
Like, there needs to be a little more to who are these people, because this is really a nice take on basically what I think is the Stepford Wives, kind of this small town which lures people in to use for their own needs.
Yeah, it's an interesting premise. I think it's too lofty for what the filmmaker was able to accomplish. It ended up feeling to me like that movie The Wretched.
Oh, yeah.
Where like all these witches run this port town and do all this stuff to the men, but it's like they don't really explain why or what they do with these men.
Yeah, there's
no purpose to why they're doing this to these people.
Right. Besides the subtext of, this interracial gay couple that's there, that is interesting and that we do not see enough of on film. So automatically I was like, oh, I want to see this film. But yeah, it just, but the first half of the film is not bad. The ambiance is quite good, but you look back on them as kind of red herrings. Like, one of the best scenes is that bridge scene where Kayla and Tyler...
Oh, yeah, that's a good scene.
When you first see Tyler, she rides her bike by him, and I'm like, oh, he looks like out of the 50s, like James Dean.
Yeah.
And it turns out because he's immortal. But they're on a bridge, and they see this man running down it towards them, which is really well done.
Yeah, well done and creepy.
But then that's a red herring. That has nothing to do with...
Well, my first note is... I was a little concerned at the beginning because the first sort of scare we get is Malik hearing knocking, but it's really that branch hitting the window. And I thought, oh, this is going to be one of those. The film is stronger than that.
Yeah. I was initially concerned because of who it stars, but...
Wow.
But
my next note is I was very surprised when I saw the guy with the small penis from Scary Movie in this film.
Lochlyn Munro. Yeah, he's in all kinds of stuff, and he's pretty enjoyable.
Him.
Yeah. Should we talk about Bowyer-Chapman?
Well, I only have 3 more notes.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was funny that the interracial gay couple moved into the pink house in the small town.
Well, but it also is like, why is the better life here? They could have established a little bit more, because there's a hint at the... this feels like it was written by somebody that is gay or knows something about gay couples and their past history, but... Their dynamic should have been explained a little better, because to acknowledge that clearly they invite outside partners into their bedroom sometimes, and then for Aaron to spaz out and kick him out of the house.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, like, why would a couple who clearly engage in like extracurricular sexual activities, like the downfall of that relationship would be the one engaging?
But it's like, leave the house tonight in the middle of nowhere. You're clearly having some kind of disturbance.
He seemed like a shitty partner.
And he's the only like gay black person in town. Like, that's shitty. And it's not unlike a mechanism used in that Kevin Bacon film with Amanda Seyfried.
You should leave now, or
you should have left.
You should have,
because he makes her do that when he finds out she's cheating, and it's like, well, is that whatever?
After Malik finds out the old man who passed him the note dies, he goes over to the neighbor's house and like breaks in.
Yeah,
which I thought was ridiculous, but also like a very tense scene, just because I couldn't believe that character's doing that.
There's a pattern of unbelievable behavior, but that's to create they're really, the film is doing 2 things. Because Malik is disturbed, and there is something supernatural going on, and they just
it's a lot. So the note that the man passes him is blank, so then Malik of course tries to like rub a pencil across it to see if he can see the imprint of what was written on it. Nothing. And then somehow, I don't know what triggers him to do this, but he decides like, oh, I'll get the paper wet.
Yes, and then it's because he's in the shower.
Okay.
Something with the mirror, and that triggers him to...
So he gets the paper wet, and then he notices that there are a bunch of dates on, like, the paper all of a sudden illuminates, like, with, like, text, and it's a bunch of dates. And that's when Malik is prompted to go to the library and research all those dates. We also find out that all of the flashbacks that Malik is having to his boyfriend from 20 years prior being the victim of a hate crime, there are, like, 2 or 3 scenes where Malik calls that man, Liam, asking for advice, explaining to him what's going on, and we even hear Liam talking and saying like, I can't do this anymore, like my therapist says this is not healthy, I'm gonna hang up. But we find out that Liam's actually dead.
Yeah.
So he's just, all of this is in his mind. I think, well, let me finish my last. like you said, when that ghost handed him the VHS tape, that's when I think the film really...
It's like in Sinister with Ethan Hawke, when you start seeing the children ghosts flitting around like little
the
fairies.
film was working for me until you see those stupid kids running around. I think this film was doing all right for me.
Yeah.
Spiral was doing all right for me until that ghost with the VHS tape.
And then you see her again.
And then you see her again.
Darting out, and yeah, those don't play that well.
My last note is Malik's character seems so invested in this girl, the 16-year-old daughter of his boyfriend.
I have a theory about that.
Okay, well, you can say it because I just wasn't feeling it.
I think it's because we have to show like queer characters be that way, because if we don't, then it makes them seem like shitty parents.
That's actually a good point, and I'm just a jerk because I don't necessarily care about kids and.
Well, you said like if I married you and you had a kid and they came to.
If it came down, well.
Sure, no, that's understandable, and
he just seems so invested.
That's true.
Like he goes and kills a man, thinking that she might be harmed.
Mm-hmm.
Girl, bye. No.
Well, when at the final scene when Lochlyn Munro is confronting him in the jail cell, he's shrieking, "Don't hurt her! Don't you hurt her!"
I'm thinking like, get me out of jail, motherfucker. Forget this girl.
Take them, not me. No. So I think that's why.
I think this film deserves credit. I think the story's somewhat original, especially in the sense that it's featuring like an interracial gay couple, which we need to see more of. So I like that component.
Oh yeah. Like,
many parts of the film work for me. I was worried about Jeffrey Bowyer-Chapman because I don't enjoy him as a personality. Like I've seen a lot of his work on TV. I've heard him on podcasts. He does not, he's just not my flavor, but
same, and I have to say I got lost thinking it was him. Like I thought he worked fine for the character, so I came out pleasantly surprised at that. But I do have the same feelings as you do about his personality, and that it seems artificial.
It seems real fake.
It seems fake, but you know he's a very handsome man. I think he started out as a model, so I think he just developed this. He developed that kind of persona that a lot of very attractive people do. Is just they're going to get attention no matter what. And
I'm not like that. I'm just.
That's
kidding.
true. You aren't like that. And not every attractive person does it. But that people responded to him positively no matter what. So this is what he adopted to deal with people, to be light and frivolous and bubbly and his best gay self. And it just comes across as infantile sometimes. But.
Yeah, and I also think, to be fair to him, I think part of my dislike for him was he did seem fake and didn't seem very sort of like aware of sort of the plight of the Black American experience. But then it's like
he's Canadian.
But he's not an African American. He's from Canada, so.
But you know he like
that might play into like why he seems a little off to me. But again, that's me, not him.
Right.
So I think he did a fine job in this film.
I haven't watched Canada's Drag Race, but
he's been getting a lot of heat for that.
Which sounds, from what I know very peripherally about it, sounds like a lot of bullshit against him for no reason, ostensibly. But you know, even when he was a judge on, is it the last season of All Stars? Oh, because he didn't know who Walter Mercado was, and just him, like he is not pretentious enough to not admit that he doesn't know something. So I don't know.
Well, I mean,
like maybe people are
his
too
sort
harsh.
of like social standing right now shouldn't affect this film. And
I agree.
I think he does a fine enough job. I just think the film is doing too much for what it was able to achieve. If it would have taken, I didn't even need the immortal people component of it. I think it would have been creepy to have this guy like experiencing this sort of like mental breakdown and blurring the lines between reality and what's in his head.
Because as queer people, especially in period pieces in the 90s and before and after, there's a real fear in moving to rural areas.
That alone.
You don't need any supernatural
really
elements.
Yeah.
You just need to show these racist ass, homophobic ass people and how they react to you, and tell me you're not going to be.
If you told me I had to move to Daphne, Alabama, I'd be scared. You don't need to add vampires or anything.
Yeah.
What would you give this movie?
It starts out very strong to me, but peters out. 2.5 out of 5, I think is fair.
I would give it 2.5 out of 5 as well. Thank you.
Mom.